Index-TTS is a relatively new TTS with zero-shot voice cloning. On May 14th, about a week and a half ago, as of time of recording, they released their latest model, 1.5. Today, I am going to show it off so you can decide for yourself if you want to use it. This video will be narrated using Index-TTS so that you can get a better feel for it during the course of the video. What you are hearing right now is the voice of Keith David based on about 25 seconds of audio. It's worth noting that this is not an instant solution. On my machine, it takes about 30 to 45 seconds to generate output, so it's not appropriate for situations where you need text in real time. I'll get to the main demo shortly. But first, let's go over the installation process. If you are used to PyTorch-based stuff, nothing surprising is going on here, but there are a couple of things to take note of. First, the latest version of Python that works for this is 3.11. I tried 3.12 and 3.13, but one of the dependencies has a hard version limit. You can also use Python 3.10 if you like, but I'll be demonstrating in a 3.11 virtual environment. So first, just stand up your virtual environment, and don't forget to upgrade pip and wheel. Then install PyTorch using the appropriate command for your system given on the PyTorch website. The latest version of PyTorch works for me, and I recommend installing whatever is the latest at the time. But for reference, this specific version is 2.7.0 for ROCm 6.3. And after that's done, simply run pip install-r requirements.txt. I am kind of surprised that you don't have to edit the requirements file. It just works as is, so props to the Index-TTS team for setting it up properly. Once all that's done, you still have one more thing to do, and that's to download the model from Hugging Face. Go to the Index team's Index-TTS 1.5 repository and download all the files into the checkpoints folder. After that, you are good to go. Just run WebUI.py. Now let's get to the fun part. The first thing you'll notice is that the interface is in Chinese. But don't worry, there are only a couple buttons to worry about. The two options below the text box are for regular inference and batch inference. We'll keep it on regular inference. The button on the bottom runs the inference. The box on the left is for the reference voice to clone, and the box on the right is the output audio. You are probably tired of hearing Keith David's voice, so let's switch it up and see what this puppy can do. Let's start with an accent test. We'll use a few seconds of Scottish comedian Billy Connolly.
If you're like me, you like to wander through towns and countryside. Hello, it's me, famous comedian Billy Connolly. Look at me and my Scottish accent. It's so Scottish. I bet if I walked into a bar in Glasgow, everyone would be astonished with how Scottish I sound, and definitely not generically British. Okay, maybe it's not the best Scottish accent, and maybe I sound a little deadpan. But that could be due to the source voice being deadpan to begin with. Let's try a different voice that's more excited, so we can test out how well this text-to-speech performs with some emotion behind it.
Punishment this world! Yami ni nomareru!
Not only are we going to test how well it transfers the emotion of the reference voice, we're also testing how well it transfers non-English speech. Index-TTS is primarily focused on English and Chinese text, but a voice is a voice no matter the language. It does appear to have a heavy bias toward producing American accents, so keep that in mind. As you can hear, I've had considerable difficulty in getting it to yell. Maybe if I type in all caps that will do something, but seriously, I think this thing is not well trained on voices with a lot of emotion behind them, which is a common problem with datasets that primarily have a lot of reading in a calm voice. So does Index-TTS support any other languages? Well, it certainly doesn't support Japanese. If you try, you'll get something like this. It's probably best to stick with English and Chinese. It also seems to struggle with such a high-pitched reference, so let's switch the voice out with someone else a little lower-pitched.
All right, the last thing we're going to go over is the token limit. One of the settings you can see below is a token count, as well as a 120 token limit, which can be adjusted. Text that is longer than the token limit will be split up into multiple chunks so that we keep the VRAM usage low and don't take too much time per segment to process. Feel free to adjust this limit depending on your system, but the default of 120 tokens is a good default. On my machine, inference uses about 5 to 6 gigabytes of VRAM, which is pretty modest and should work for most people with a dedicated GPU. Since the text is split into segments, this means that there is not really a limit to the length of the text you can put into the text box. This is pretty handy, especially considering that other zero-shot voice cloning text-to-speech systems don't implement this, forcing you to split the text up manually. So what's my final verdict? I think that this is an interesting tool, and I am interested in seeing where it goes from here. But I gotta be honest, it's not my favorite. I still think the best zero-shot voice cloning TTS solutions are Mask GCT and Zonos. Still, I have to hand it to Index-TTS for ease of usability and relatively low system requirements. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that T here is a Hugging Face demo that you can use online if you want to try it out before installing it locally. Anyway, if you are interested in trying out novel TTS solutions, give it a shot, but don't go in with high expectations. But that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this brief tour of what Index-TTS has to offer, and that my demonstrations were informative. If you have any questions, just leave a comment. But as always, thank you for watching, and have a nice day.